What you are about to hear might just keep you up tonight. Welcome to Hauntcore Vault. I am the storyteller, and I'll help you fall asleep. If you are new, please subscribe to the channel. Let's dive in the vault. About 8-ish years ago, I lived in a town in the mountains that had a lot of vacant and abandoned houses. I had gone into 2 of them. The first one I went into honestly scared me. It was off a stone road with a few other houses scattered down the road. My boyfriend at the time and I drove there even though it was less than a mile from where we lived. It had snowed a lot, and there was probably a good 8 inches of snow on that lot. The house was set back from the road and had a long driveway. The first weird thing was there were appliances, stoves, washers, dryers, refrigerators, just lining the driveway on either side. The house itself was a big house and a split level. Front door, when you go in, you can go up the few steps to the main area or down the few steps to the bottom level. There were no steps to get into the front door, so we went to the side. The door was already kicked in and snow blowing to the inside. The house was completely gutted. We went in, and there were those really tall Jesus candles you can get from like the dollar store, lining the hallway on both sides, had to be close to 100 in total, and went up the stairs to the front door, continued up the other steps, and stopped in front of a door a little to the right of the kitchen, which was at the top of the steps. There was heavy plastic, like layers. It was thick, acting as a door so we couldn't see in the room. We decided to go check it out, so we pushed the plastic aside to go in. The room was small, and there was a small folding table set up in the middle of the room with 1 chair, 1 plate on the table, 1 fork, 1 spoon, and 1 cup knocked over. The room's air felt very heavy, as if whoever was there, or there last, was very depressed and sad, and maybe even took their life there, but no signs of that. There was no other furniture in the room. There was a closet door that was ajar, but we heard a noise come from behind it. Thinking it was an animal or something, we opened the door and there was a black top hat on a hook and nothing else. I started to get anxiety really bad, and the heaviness of the air was getting to me. We walked out of the room through the heavy plastic, and I stopped at the top of the steps as my ex wanted to go down the hall. But I was getting too creeped out. I told him to hurry up. He was maybe 10 steps down the hall when the plastic from the doorway flew open, and I felt this big, forceful rush of air go past me and down the steps. It almost knocked me over. My ex heard the plastic move and ran toward me, pretty much picked me up. I'm not a skinny person, and we ran down the steps and out the door back to my car. It was terrifying. That plastic could not have moved on its own. The other house I was in was not scary at all. It was almost comforting. The small house had been vacant for a long time, and the roof was collapsing in. We went in through the front door, and it was like whoever once lived there just left one day and never came back. I'm assuming it was an elderly person who died, and no one came to empty the house. Everything was still there. Medicine in the bathroom that expired in 1994. Dishes were on a drying rack next to sink. Wallet with ID, dentures, just everything. It was sad. We checked out the home and found tons of cool stuff, especially an old World War I or World War II uniform, an old sewing machine, record player with tons of records, and this old parchment paper book of records dating back to the 1890s with railroad information and costs of materials and letters between family and friends and business transactions. It was super cool to see that. We didn't take anything, but it was neat to feel like we stepped back in time. I moved out of that area and a couple years ago went to drive by that house, but it's not there anymore. One of my favorite hobbies is photography. So one day, while visiting Virginia for a job I was working at the time, my friend and I decided to go look for some abandoned places to take photographs of, since Halloween was just around the corner. So, after some driving around and some quick phone research, we find this 1950s-era abandoned insane asylum. We couldn't find a way in, and all the door entrances were locked, boarded off, and guarded by cameras. Finally, we found an old, busted window that led to what once was the kitchen. After some quick thinking, we found an old chair and hopped in. The place was super dark, wet, and cold, and as soon as I set foot down, I got the chill down my spine, as if something was there, or somebody, or something was watching me. My friend, who was a lot less shaken, wanted to go look around. I started snapping pics of things that were broken or flipped over. My friend walks down a hallway with the words, "All who enter die," written on the wall. I did not follow, but between being spooked and taking the pics, I just wasn't ready to take that step yet. It wasn't 30 seconds later, my friend comes speeding back in the room looking frightened, but trying to keep himself calm, and said, "All right, I've seen enough, let's go, now." I said, "What happened? Did you see something?" He didn't say a word, but walked past me and started climbing back out the window we came in. I was close to the hallway, and I guess my nature curiosity kicked in, so I leaned over and peeked down the hallway. At the end of the hallway was an empty chair. Something small was in the chair, looked like a ball or something, and the next thing I know, it slid off the chair and landed on the floor. I was totally freaked out. I screamed, "Oh, hell no!" and ran for the window. My friend was waiting on the other side, so I threw him my camera and I leapfrogged out the window, cutting up my hands in the progress, but not really caring about it. We ran back to the car, got in, and speeded away. It wasn't until a few minutes and a few miles later we finally calmed down enough to talk to each other about what happened. I said, "Did you see that ball in the chair? When I looked down the hallway, I saw something in that chair, and then it fall to the floor." My friend looked at me with shock and disbelief in his eyes and said, "It wasn't a ball. I was walking down the hallway, peeking into the empty rooms, and it was creepy seeing the flipped-over beds and stuff scattered everywhere, but when I got closer to the end of the hallway, what looked like an empty chair, a small doll sitting there. I thought I was spooky, but probably some crackhead put it there, and as soon as I thought that, the doll went from sitting up to laying over. So I ran out of there. I thought I may have overreacted, and maybe it was a breeze or something that knocked it over, but once you said it got knocked to the ground, I knew it could have been a breeze, and that totally freaked me out. So yeah, I know it doesn't sound very scary, but you had to been there. With the combination of cold and chills and how quiet and secluded it was, just made a perfect condition, so be scared more than I ever have before. My ex-husband and I used to love going into old abandoned houses years ago. There was a beautiful old 2-story brick home about a mile from where we lived. The grass and trees were so grown and tall it was hard even getting to the house. My ex managed to get a window open and we climbed through it. It was like a time capsule. Very nice and expensive furniture and stuff everywhere. Furniture was covered with really dusty sheets. Everything looked high quality and expensive. Even the wallpaper was rich. It was creepy how it seemed like they walked away from all of it in the 1950s or 60s. The kitchen was upstairs, which was odd. But we ventured up there, and there was a huge arch opening into a gentleman's-type man cave, Again, lots of expensive furniture and stuff. I stood in the archway while my ex rummaged through stuff. Off to the side of the arch was a huge mirror leaning against the wall. I used it to check my hair for spider webs. Took maybe 3 steps away from the mirror to tell my ex I wanted to go. It literally felt like someone was standing beside me. Took the 3 steps back to the mirror, and in bright pink lipstick were the words, "Get out." I swear on my life and the lives of my children, it was right there, and it hadn't been 2 minutes before. The mirror was only a few feet behind me the entire time, and I definitely would have seen "Get out" in bright pink lipstick a minute before. I even remember the exact shade of lipstick, too. It was the kind old ladies like to wear. Well, I screamed and jumped back into a kitchen table and fell. My ex comes running over, and I am so scared I just point to the mirror, babbling like an idiot. My ex calmly got me out of there, and we never went back. He thinks I didn't notice it before, but I was all up on that mirror, so I would have absolutely noticed bright pink lipstick in the middle of it. Get cold hills every time I think about it.